Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap by SHP Financial, a podcast empowering today's retirees and pre-retirees to make well-informed financial decisions that will help you spend more time living and dreaming than worrying and wondering. Join me, Matthew Peck, along with my co-hosts, Gregoire and Keith Ellis, as we share actionable financial strategies and insights, as well as interview top thought leaders in the world of finance, accounting, and estate planning. This is all aimed at preparing you for the retirement you've always dreamed of. Our high-quality holistic planning process has helped thousands of families retire and create what we like to call the ripple effect. The Retirement Roadmap is your guide to financial freedom. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Well, all right, everyone, you are in for a treat today because, for one, it's just the boys. So we got Derek and Keith here. And also, for anyone that does not know the origin story. I mean, I think any of those comic books out there, everyone needs to know, like, how do these guys get to where they are, how they evolve, and then, why we think that planning is just so important. What this podcast and or radio show is going to be about. So it's just for a lot of our listeners, you're going to know the story, and maybe you'll get a little tidbits here and there. A lot of other people probably don't know our background and are relatively new to us. So we really want to make sure that you know kind of who we are as people, why we hold, the values of financial planning so true to our heart. And what we like to call the ripple effect, about why what we do is so important, because it's not just our clients that are helping, but it's their families, it's their friends, and then it's our employees and the teammates that work here at SHP that we like to think that what we do really does make a difference for a lot of people, or a lot more people than you'd like to think. For people that don't know, I'll bring on Gregoire. You'll recognize his voice for anyone that did listen to RKO and BZ and XTK back in the day. Then, of course, Keith Ellis as well. And then I'm just a random guy. Not random guy, but just, Matt Peck, whatever. You'll obviously know me as well. So thanks so much for listening. And guys, who wants to start us off telling our history?
Yeah, well, a lot of people always want to know, like, how did you guys even start? Because it's been over 18 years, so we get that question. And it's not, I hate almost talking about it because it feels self-serving, but people always ask us, like, well, how'd this start? Where did you guys start? You have, close to 40, 50 employees. Where did this all begin and why? And for me, so I know we all started at a small company back in 2001, 2002. And I guess we'll leave the company unnamed for now. But the long story short is, I remember when I graduated college, all through high school, my dad had me plastering, doing drywall. That was his company. And I remember during that time, all of his employees would say, Derek, why are you going to college? You're a Gregoire. You're going to be plastering, and when you're done, don't even waste.
Actually, funny, I've never heard that part.
Oh, see, people are learning. So and my dad, one day he goes, I knew I had you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, we were driving home from the Cape. It was a long day, hot, and you were in the pickup truck, and you looked over and were like, Dad, do you mind if I go to college? And he's like, why? What do you say that for? What do you want to do? And I said, I don't know what I want to do. I just know what I don't want to do. And it's this. And so he's like, I knew I had you at that point. So long story short, I graduated college. I went for finance. I was in the School of Management, Eisenberg at UMass Amherst back in 2001, 2002. That I thought the job market was pretty good, but I was not a good interviewer. So there was a final company. I was down to me and one other person, and they went with the other person. And I would have been stuck at some company in Boston doing like fund accounting. Mm-hmm. And so there I was back with my dad, plastering all his employees and just give me a hard time. Like, I told you you'd be back here. And then, so we took a job, all of us, at a place where basically if you fogged a mirror, you could get hired, right?
You did a good job.
I did
making it seem special.
I did. They seemed like I really had to try.
Well. Yeah.
And then so we started there, and then when I started there, Keith was there and Matt was there. You guys were already there, and this is like May of 2002 when I started.
Right around there, yeah.
Right around that point.
Yeah, no, and I just love the idea too of, like, I just vividly remember I was senior in college and just going on to monster.com or whatever it was.
That's what it was.
Was that okay? So
clearly that's how I found it too.
That's so funny. Yeah, they plastered using that original website, and we're talking 2001, so we're talking early internet, before Indeed and all that stuff. And then I remember, like, okay, I got to get a job out of college. Diana, was a girlfriend at the time, wife now. We were, about to go backpacking across Europe. So it's like, I got to make sure I get a job on my way back. So all the stress and whatnot. And then, going to the interview that you found on monster.com. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then they said, yep, we'd like to make you the offer. And I was like, wow, I really nailed it. It
almost drove off the road.
The salary was amazing. I was
so excited.
Zero.
Yeah.
The salary of $0 was very convincing.
That was really good. That's solid.
That's what sold me.
Well, I do say, or I would say that at least very early on, what appealed to me about the whole industry and kind of led us, well, at least personally, kind of how what added fuel to the fire was the fact that I just love the idea that how hard you work is how hard you get paid.
Yeah.
You do no work, you get nothing. And if you do work, you get paid.
Yeah,
so there's
100%.
no office politics or anything along those lines. However, like you guys will attest, I did not realize that the work that we were doing was, knocking on random doors. And they had this program. I won't call the name of the program, but what it was is that you had to write letters to, first you called up random people and just said, hey,
can I send you a letter?
Yeah, may I send you a letter of information? Random person says, sure. You then
just to get you off the phone.
It's like, who is this random person calling me? And then they agree to receive.
I'm on the do not call list. Why?
Yes, I got a great lead. Someone agreed to have me send him a letter.
Yeah, and I literally think that the do not call list was happened 4 years later.
Because of us. It was because of us.
And then you call that person back 2 weeks later and say, hey, I know I sent you that information you didn't request.
Do you remember what it was? Do you remember what it was addressed in, Keith? Remember the color?
What?
The color of the writing?
I do.
No, actually, I don't.
Oh,
red.
It was,
yes.
Red.
It was a red addressed envelope.
Because it really stood out.
Yep.
So, that was the type of work that we had to do in order to then, start off in the insurance world.
And Matt and I moved to the Boston branch of this company. Mm-hmm. And Keith and I were we'd sit in a closet and we'd say call for call. So we'd literally go back and forth all day until we got enough of people that would want to sit down with us for the following week. Mm-hmm. And it was a grind.
Just to have a conversation. And so over the year or so, it was actually amazing training because I look at our team here, they have, I feel like that old person that says, remember I had to walk through the snow and 10 miles to school? This is the version of it for running a business because our team, we're lucky enough to have a lot of referrals, and through marketing channels, we give a lot of new appointments that are all qualified and have money, and they just sit down with them, and that's good
it.
people that we want to help, and that's,
exactly.
It's really, really rewarding.
It wasn't like that 20 years ago.
Well,
no.
And that's sort of a question that I have just out of curiosity, and I don't think any one of us knows, but is it the same? Or does, because I think the biggest thing, I think a lot of business owners will run into this, or people will kind of appreciate it, and sorry to our producer over here, but, millennials will have this sort of reputation of feeling entitled, okay, hey, I worked here for 3 months, I should be getting a promotion now at this point.
Evan he said he wants to make $1 million in 2 months from now, right?
Okay.
He's not just right away.
Yeah.
He said, give me a few months, then I'll ask for that.
So we have to, as you mentioned, Derek, about what we used to do, back in the day. It's like, I feel compelled to tell people about what we had to go through because, where we are now is just, it's a tribute to all of your guys and all of our hard work. But where we are today versus where we first began is just as night and day as you can get.
And to kind of flip the switch on that, and not to skip ahead, but what I didn't like about that experience was the fact that, you sat in a boardroom every Friday and they're up promoting this one particular product or this one particular thing that you had to kind of push.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was almost like, and I know we've used this analogy in the past, but it's like, hey, look, we own a shoe store, right? And all we have is size 9s and someone has a size 13, we're going to do whatever we can, just kind of squeeze that size 9 on that size 13. And I think that's where we kind of, the three of us, took a look at this and said,
doesn't feel
is this the right thing? Is this the right path forward? Do we want to continue here? And again, I think that's what led us to how we do planning today. And I don't want to skip a lot of the story, but I really think that experience was great from a training standpoint. And from a very humbling, and from a
just from propelling, I don't know the word to use, I guess, but like it really kind of set the tone for where this thing has gone, I guess.
Well, Keith, being like 6'5", 280 back then, he had the cops called on.
I did have the cops called on me because I knocked on
a door and they were like, who is this person?
And they just never answered the door, and all of a sudden a cop car swings around the corner and, sir, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I mailed them a letter.
Well, like, I'm selling insurance, I swear.
Yeah, so that basically so at that point we were like, wait a minute, we had done pretty well there, but like he said, it was one company, you had to kind of offer their stuff and no one else's stuff, and it's like that isn't fair, especially early on. You don't know, you're naive, but then as time goes by, you're like, wait a minute, there's so many other options that they're sheltering us from that we didn't even know about.
And guess what? They're better for the client.
Correct. Yeah. well, that's the thing too. I mean, because we were falling into a trap that I think, a lot of, even today, people with their advisors fall into, which is like, have you ever noticed that your advisor will only talk about what they get paid for? Mm-hmm. So you might ask them about Social Security, and they'll say, "Well, I'm
call
sorry,
Social Security."
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise. Now, if you ask them about insurance products back in the day, we would tell people all day long about this insurance and that annuity and this long-term care and this life insurance. Back 20 years ago. But nowadays, and again, to Keith's, to what you're saying, I want to skip too far ahead. But we just, I think early on realized that, okay, we have to provide value and information more than just what we actually get paid for.
Correct.
But things like, and even for people that have listened to the podcast, talking about health insurance with groups like Brabo Benefits and Scott Hokinson, or taxes with Peter Roach and his CPA firm out of
helping people plan their estate plan and their legacy strategies. You're right. It's
we don't charge for coordinating any of that. It's all that's the thing is you want to give value beyond what you get paid for.
No, absolutely.
And back to 2003, I remember around the summer we're like, I was 23, I think Matt was 24, and Keith was 25.
Yes.
And we were like, you know what, we should start a company, and we didn't know what to do, but we wanted to provide. Our hearts were in the right spot. We wanted to provide more options, have just more availability for our clients in terms of what we were offering. And I remember, that's when we started in Pembroke on Scoosett Street, and Scott Hokinson, Brabo Benefits, it was old Hokinson building, whatever. In the top second floor, we had some corner office, wasn't a pretty spot, but it was a cool transition because they helped us coordinate. The rent was pretty cheap, and it was a good transition. And the thing that I realized at that point, I've told this a million times to clients, is that when the three of us worked together at that point, I was always like, I saw situations come up, and we couldn't afford anything more than a Subway sandwich at that point. And
only the Veggie Delight. We couldn't even afford the meat.
We couldn't afford the meat. And I remember, but in all seriousness, I remember like I knew we were going to be okay because I saw there was times where we could have just made money to make money, and I saw you guys. I was like, I can control myself. I know I'm going to do the right thing, but I didn't know you as well as I obviously 20 years later. But at that point, I was like, I saw you guys operating in a really capacity, like, hey, we're going to do what's right for the client no matter what. And I remember at that point, I was like, you know what, we're going to be okay. It might take us a while, which it did, but we're going to be okay. And then, so we started in that building in 2003.
It's funny because Scott was in here a couple weeks ago, and he was describing the seating arrangements in Scoosett Street and how upstairs where we were, there was just filing cabinets everywhere, and we built like little desk areas in between the filing cabinets. And he was calling it like whack-a-mole.
Have it pop up?
Like he'd run up the stairs and be like, Keith, and I'd pop up. Or Derek, you'd pop up. So it was a pretty funny description. I never thought of it like that. I got a kick out of it.
Yeah.
And then, so in 2005, we actually left there and moved into actually right at this building in Plymouth, just different side of the building. It was just in, I think it was around 2006, we had our first employee, which was Giselle, who's still with us to this day.
Yeah, a lot of our clients love her. They know her very well, and she's been with us forever. And, to see that familiar face is, nice for the clients, too.
And we used to joke around that it was water view, but you had to sort of stand in a certain corner of one room, and then you'd be able to see a slight sliver of Plymouth Harbor. But, that was our second office.
And I think since that time, I think the evolution of SHP has really just been how every year we've tried to add more value, right? And I think, sometimes people get nervous, not nervous, but they ask us, you have now 41 employees. 10 years ago, you had 5 or 6. What's the reason? And I think, like you said, Matt, there's so many things that we want to plan for stuff that we don't get paid for. But if you serve people in that way, you're going to get taken care of just in how you treat people by referrals and so forth. So that's why we built out a team of portfolio experts, a team of planning experts, a team that works on the estate planning, health insurance, tax planning. And there's, I know we're skipping ahead here on the story.
That's okay. No.
But the value is where what we've always tried to add on each year.
Yeah, people always ask, you continue to hire, am I still going to work with you? Yes, of course. But like they don't ask where you're hiring, and it's really just to support, provide additional information. People have a question. I get clients that ask me questions about everything, anything from mortgages, real estate agent, you name it. I've been asked it. Yeah. Do I know a carpenter in the area, a plumber in the area? And I'm finding that for them because, the resources that we do have, the goal that we set out, in my opinion, was to be, all things to certain people, or all things to the families we work with. And that's really what we try to do.
Well, it was along the same line, and similar to way back when, Derek, I was loving to share that story about how even back then we weren't after every last penny and after every last dime and every last commission. It was like, no, let's do the right thing. And it was also along the lines of doing what we said we're going to do. Or just say, okay, hey, when people came on, we never wanted, or at least, personally, and I'm sure you guys will agree, and I hope that our listeners didn't, haven't experienced this, where they say they kind of got a dog and pony show, or what's it?
Bait and switch.
Yeah, bait and switch. Thank you. Where it's like, okay, I was told they were going to do this, this, and this for me, but then they never really did it. They talked about doing it, but they never really did it. And it was always crucial to me because especially as we expanded into all of those areas, like, I think you said like plumbers and mortgages and all these things, like we don't do that things personally, but we want to make sure that clients came to us as that complete resource because it's all tied together, and I think a crucial part was just, following like along the evolution, was making sure that we had those 5 steps, making sure that people knew that they had an income plan built out, and that took a look at their pension analysis, Social Security, expenses, their investment plan, and Derek, you mentioned it quickly. I mean, not only do we have our own portfolios, but we have this investment committee and team that's there to provide, the high
That's all
quality.
they're doing.
Yeah, right. That's
they're
all
not,
they're doing.
They're not meeting with clients. They're not doing all the other stuff. Like, a lot of firms, the person who you're meeting with is also managing the portfolios, and it's...
Or not only that, and sorry to interrupt, Eric, or they're maybe not managing portfolios, but like, oh yeah, that group's out of New York. What I mean?
Some
or
random third party.
Yeah, they have zero connection with the people that are actually making those decisions.
Right.
And it's higher cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously tax planning, when you saw Peter Roach, and healthcare planning with Hokinson, and then legacy planning with the Attorney McManus, Attorney Carr, Attorney Court. I think I was getting.
Yeah, Melinda Court.
Melinda, thank you.
But think about even like 10 years. So we're now 2021, almost 2022. Think back even in 07, 08, 09, as we were evolving, we started saying, hey, we want to provide tax planning and income planning in all these 5 areas, and we did it to the best that we could. But we didn't have the ability to deliver on it to the extent that we can now, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, right?
No, true.
And so we did the best we could, but now that's where a lot of the hirings come from, because every client, we want to not leave any stone unturned. And so if you missed the episode we had with Peter Roach on the podcast, just listen to that. I mean, we had so many areas of value that can be added when it comes to tax planning, in whether it's, Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting, the backdoor Roth, the mega Roth, after tax planning, and a 401k. My point is, you can't, one person or a small office, I'm not bashing any small office, trust me, I know they do good work, but to deliver on all these areas, you need support.
You need a team.
Well, and that's the other part too. It's like here you have these other advisors that, it's almost like they're too big and you don't have that connection with them. And then you have really these individual sort of, for lack of a better word, mom and pop shops where it's like, okay, well, what happens if something happens to you? Because I think that was the other part too. And, I mean, we're planners and, not to talk health or whatever it is, but more so that we knew that we weren't going to be here forever. So what happens if we got hit by a bus? Part of the reason that we grew was to make sure that our clients, they had their own succession plan. They had their own idea that no matter what happens, it's not just Matt or Keith or Derek. SHP as a whole is going to be there for them, and for their spouses if they were to pass away too. I mean, you have that type of continuity, and that's what we've been building, all these years towards.
Enough, I guess we can say now it's enough about us, but really, we're trying to on this show, right? We're really.
Well, I think it's a good setup to kind of let people know who we are. So then, as we start to continue to do this, hopefully they get an idea.
Testify. This is our testimonial.
Hopefully, get a lot of good laughs out of that.
Yeah.
But basically, if you think about what the goal of the show is to help, we're going to dissect in the future in every area of our 5-step process, right? And it's, income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy. But think of income. Just on income alone, there's how to create the retirement budget. What are fixed expenses versus inflationary expenses? What are discretionary expenses? Travel. How do you build that into the budget properly? Then you have, how about Social Security? When do you take Social Security? That's a whole topic. Then it's pension. Do you have a pension lump sum versus income? What does that look like? Then it's how do you invest to cover your income gap? So just in one little world, and I can go on and on. That's 4 or 5 different topics that we have to dissect that we can't do in one show. But these are all areas that we're going to work on going forward to go through all these small areas of retirement.
And we're going to continue to bring on guests to provide extra value, be over and beyond our expertise. So yeah, we're excited to do this.
Well, and to that point too, that's why I love the new medium. I guess we are old men in the sense that we're just we're expanding into podcasts. We're really developing more of a podcast as compared to just a radio show that was a podcast. Point being is that we're gonna have much more time to develop these ideas. Develop the ideas of things like safety income growth. Develop ideas of Roth conversions and how that works. Because right now I'm up to my neck in Roth conversions.
Me too.
Towards the end of the year, and you got to make sure they're all in. Even estate planning. I think I remember talking about ILETs and establishing estate tax. Or even when Peter was here for that episode, it's like we didn't have a chance to really talk about Massachusetts estate tax and that issue. Right. And so it's just being able to really expand on these ideas. I think are going to be so helpful for the listeners to get better value out of spending the time and giving them giving us your hard-earned time for us to tell you kind of how we make the sausage, if you will.
I mean, it's even earlier today I was coming from another appointment where we were doing succession planning. So we had myself, the CPA, the 2 owners of the company, and some of and the attorney that's handling this, and that's a whole other discussion that a lot of clients have to face. Is I'm the owner of a business, or I'm multiple owners, and if something happens to you, what does that look like? Who gets what? Is there voting shares versus not? We know this very well, but how does that look to the next generation? Or do you want, if you have one person that has equity as a child, do they have voting rights to make decisions on the day-to-day? So even succession planning is something that another area that we want to try to help people with if you own that business, right? It depends on if you have a business or not. But I'm saying there's so many areas of retirement planning, business planning, succession planning to get into.
Millennial or Gen X planning, that we're also part of it. And what we're going to hopefully do is, have, different advisors coming on with certain topics of the week or topics of the month, if they will. As I mentioned, one of our great advisors, Zeke, he helps out with the millennials. So what we'll try to do is, there's so many areas. And so we're just so excited to get, to really get started. And, I don't know if you guys have any more words on the history of SHP or if we're ready to kind of wrap this one up, and then we'll be able to move on to something more in depth per episode. But thanks again, and
looking forward to
keep going.
All right, have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Retirement Roadmap podcast by SHP Financial. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you've liked what you heard, please share the show. Create your own little ripples so we can help even more people with their retirement goals. If you want access to all past interviews, including notes, resources, and exclusive content from SHP Financial, visit shpfinancial.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining us on the Retirement Roadmap podcast. And for all the attorneys out there and disclaimers and disclosures, I'm just going to put on my super serious voice and add our own. No statements made during the Retirement Roadmap podcast shall constitute tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own legal or tax professional on any such matters. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Our investment advisory services are offered through SHP Wealth Management LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance sales are offered through SHP Financial LLC. Our advisors and insurance reps may offer clients advice and/or products from each entity. No client is under any obligation to purchase any insurance product.